what are the patterns that you have observed, because you are facilitating a lot of this when it comes to what we would call the banker's MO or modus operandus, how they naturally take action?
Yeah, so we've done a lot of Kolbe assessments with those in the financial industry, and I would say about 85% of them follow a very, very similar MO, which is they are initiating fact finders or initiating follow through, which means their expertise comes from their experience. They rely on historical perspective to make decisions. They focus a lot on priorities, which is wonderful. These are great, great strengths to have in the industry. But because there are so many we see, so many very similar MOs in this area where because they are initiating fact finder, many times they are resistant in what we call quick start, which means they're a little bit more resistant to change. It makes it a little bit difficult because we see what's called cognitive cloning, which is where you kind of have everyone in the room. It's almost too much of a good thing, and a lot of times that can hinder progress and hinder growth because you have a lot of these really intelligent people who research and they need to know all these facts before making decisions, and they're very protective and they're very risk averse. All wonderful strengths that we want in our bankers and those in the financial industry. But when it comes to growth and change, it makes it a little bit more challenging.
I think about the pattern matching here, the pattern matching of just essentially people within the vertical, whether they're at a bank or a credit union or at a fintech. And because you're talking about how they're initiating action either through fact finding, one of the other patterns is also through follow through, or by building systems, by maintaining systems. And when it comes to change and transformation and really even innovation, a lot of that is being spurred by those that initiate action by quick starting. That's a very typical, though, what we would see as more of an entrepreneurial like profile. And when you think about that idea of entrepreneur, if I look within a financial brand, that actually might be an intrapreneur. And it's someone to come in and kind of stir the pot, if you will. I think of this one organization, and maybe you could provide some more perspective of this as well. But cognitive cloning, this one team that we've been working with for quite a number of years now, actually. They all share a similar profile. And when we did their Kolbe assessments and we did A to A comparisons and then a team analysis, and you kind of map everything out, so you have visualization of where everyone falls within a matrix, it became very clear. And people kind of, they laugh and they nod their head. It gives also a little bit of affirmation, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This is actually a really unique situation because this is a marketing team. And oftentimes when you're with a marketing team, you tend to see those initiating quick starts where they are more innovative, experiment a little bit more. But in this case, and oftentimes in the financial industry, that's not always the case because a lot of those who end up in other departments, marketing, sales, they've grown from within. So they may have started as tellers or as frontline. So in this particular case, the marketing team was all initiating fact finders. So when you put a lot of these initiating fact finders in a room, you're susceptible to what's called analysis paralysis. It prevents things from moving forward, the needle moving forward, because everyone needs to have their research done ahead of time, or they're too busy looking up information and getting bogged down in the details to where decisions just aren't being made. And so this team has done a really, really great job of working with this cognitive cloning and not letting it hold them back. A couple of the strategies that I can think of offhand is, they set deadlines, really make sure they adhere to those deadlines so they don't get stuck in this never ending, research rabbit hole. They set real hard timers to their meetings, send out agendas ahead of time so that those who need to do that extra little bit of digging for details can do that prior to the meeting. And also working independently, really dividing tasks among each of the individuals and then coming together at the end has really helped them kind of get past this potential risk of cognitive cloning.
I'm going to add to that because I also often play the role of going in there as the quick start, as the one who stirs the pot from a positive perspective and gives them that quick start energy, knowing that they're going to have to go back and do maybe a little bit more fact finding. But that's where the coaching and the accountability that we're providing them ensures that they continuously are moving forward. They're making progress, and they make progress, but not by looking at what they still have to do. They're making progress by measuring where they have come from, and that builds their confidence, because you mentioned your own confidence just a moment ago. Confidence is one of the most important aspects or elements that any leader needs to protect, because confidence is contagious. And when you get a room full of confident people, that's where some really, I would say, transformative things can truly happen. So it's this idea of, Kolbe, it's all about being free to be yourself, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is a gift to be able to know thyself and to almost feel validated. And this is the way I operate, and it's okay. It's nothing personal at all. I think of many times we've had members in our organization who have come to me, you or I, with some sort of internal conflict or conflict on their teams, and they just want to talk about it, and they can't quite put their finger on what's going on, or why are they feeling this level of stress. And the first thing that I do is I pull out their Kolbes. I look at each of their Kolbe profiles, and more often than not, that's where the conflict lies, is in this opposing, either this opposite way of taking action, or maybe they're taking action the same way and they're almost butting heads a little bit. And it really depersonalizes things. I think a lot of times we get lost in taking things personally when things aren't going our way, especially in the work environment. I know, in the beginning for you and I, we are complete opposites. Yes. Our Kolbes, which creates the most beautiful synergy. But it's only because we're aware of that and we know how to complement each other's strengths. But if we took that away, if we completely removed that, knowing our Kolbe, there's a very high probability that things might get a little tense between us on a personal note. I know that, if you called me up out of the blue and said, Audrey, I need you to jump on this podcast in 5 minutes and be ready to go. If I didn't know my Kolbe and your Kolbe, I might think, that is so not cool. Like, why would he do that to me? Why would he throw me into this situation? He knows better. And I might kind of take that a little bit negatively, but well, for one, my Kolbe, so you probably wouldn't do that. And also I know your Kolbe, and I can push back and say, James Robert, hold on, you're quick starting me a little bit. I know you didn't think that you were, doing anything personal. And you might say, oh, you're totally right. Let's schedule it for maybe tomorrow. So it really helps us to take away some of this potential conflict and recognize this is just the way that we operate.
What you're tapping into is something that I've never thought about through this context here, which is the pyramid of human relationships that I wrote about in Banking on Digital Growth. And as my thinking is evolving now, wrapping up Banking on Change, the pyramid of human relationships still stands the test of time. It's something that Delina and I, my wife, and we've had a lot of conversations with her about this. We developed this through pattern matching couples that we were preparing for marriage. And when you look at the foundation of every positive relationship, and I've asked this now hundreds of times to financial brand teams, I've said, well, what's at the foundation of every positive relationship? And 99%, 98% will say trust. Trust is the foundation. And I say, you're on the right path. Yeah. Trust is actually the glue. The foundation, if you will, is respect. Mm-hmm. And when you're talking about this through this idea of synergy, there's a tremendous amount of respect that comes for the other person, because number one, I know myself. I also know the other person. And as I've talked with my kids many times before, you cannot respect another human being until you respect yourself. And respect comes from knowing one's self. And we've seen this idea of respect also through the work that we've been doing and the coaching that we've been doing with financial brand leaders. I know you were a part of an experience to where I think it almost, You had to keep your jaw from hitting the floor, because you saw how I handled this really tense, very uncomfortable, and almost could have been explosive situation. And the only reason I was able to navigate that conflict was because of I understood this other leader's Kolbe profile.
Yeah, you did. And you also were able to quick start because you mitigated the situation immediately where I was still frozen and I would have needed a quick timeout to come back and make a plan and a course of action on how to tackle it. But yeah, absolutely. You know, we were working with a certain individual. It was actually a group, and we were presenting a lot of different recommendations and suggestions. And in hindsight, it was a lot. It was a lot of information, and it was all happening very fast. And the leader of this organization, he had to stop us, and it was a very intense and abrupt stop. And he mentioned that he felt ambushed, and he was very defensive with the recommendations that we were providing. And when we stopped to think about how we were going about doing this, we realized we were forcing rapid change on him too quickly. This is someone who had been in this industry and in this position for, we're talking 50 years. And so we came in and disrupted this legacy way of thinking and their methods and their processes. And it jarred him. It completely jarred him. And it was too much, too fast. And so when we stepped back, we realized, okay, this isn't personal. He's not frustrated or mad at us. It's the way this information is being presented to him. And so we completely flipped the script. We stopped. We broke things up into more manageable chunks. We created a system because he is an initiating follow through, which means, you know, he needs those systems and those processes and those predictable patterns. So we stopped. We chunked everything up. We created a regular cadence of meetings so we could get comfortable to this sense of routine. And it really made all the difference. But there was a moment there where, I mean, it was pivotal. It was going to go one way or the other. And, I think Kolbe is probably the only reason why we navigated through it.
Absolutely. And I would say, coming back to this idea of respect that I was touching on before, empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy. Kolbe, for me personally, has allowed me to be an even more empathetic leader, because when I look at empathy, it's the idea you don't understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. Now, why I might have not had the experience of this other individual, I was very empathetic to where they were at that time, and I was able to meet them at that moment versus asking them to come and meet me. I was able to come and meet them. And I think, as we start to wrap up this conversation, we probably can come back and have another one, because Kolbe is doing a tremendous amount of work to create awareness for people in regards to their financial MO. And that's an area of opportunity that I'm seeing to further expand upon through the work that we're doing with financial brands, with banks, with credit unions, with fintechs. Before we get there, and I want to wrap up here, always on a practical note.
Sure.
What's your recommendation for someone who is watching or someone who is listening to our conversation here, to apply some of this knowledge? Maybe they've never taken Kolbe, and obviously the recommendation would be to you know what, I'm going to put it out here. If you're listening and you're interested in Kolbe for yourself as a leader, text me. 832-549-5792, 832-549-5792. This is what we do. This is how we help. And we can provide some more perspective, at least for you, if not your team. But even if you don't do that, what's one thing that someone can do who is listening to at least just become more aware of how they, not personality, but how they operate?
So I would say before even taking the Kolbe, I would get out a pen and paper and I would journal through it. I would make a list of all the things in your day-to-day life, whether it be personal or professional, the things that drain your energy. What exhausts you? What are some things that you might feel like you're procrastinating? Make a list of those things, and then make another list of what are the things that give you energy? What are the things that you could do all day long and just feel like, time goes by so quickly? Make those lists, look at them, analyze them, then go take your Kolbe assessment and see if you can do some pattern matching. You might find out that you are in a role or you're in a position where you're working against your natural operating modes. And that's a conversation to have, well, first with yourself to realize, okay, this is why this is happening. And then also with your team or your organization. And hey, maybe I'm the right person, but I might be in the wrong seat here. And this is how we can better, optimize and be more efficient as an individual, team, or organization.
That's a fantastic point. Do that before even thinking about taking a Kolbe assessment, because you're creating awareness by just simply sitting down and looking at kind of your day-to-day objectively. And most likely, once you take your Kolbe assessment, you're going to be able to identify those areas that are increasing your energy, or those areas that are decreasing your energy, sucking you dry, and as I always kind of joke, making you just a little bit grumpy. So I really appreciate that as a practical next best step.